I'm not gonna let go. I can't let that go.
It's not. I'm not.
Can I interject here for a second? Okay, John has a quirky thing about him, and both of you do. You know, he's
an asshole.
Well, no, two things. You didn't want to come on my show because you said that people talk. You know, that you heard that I was talking bad about you or something.
Right, but here's the difference. Here's the difference between this John and this situation. We're talking right now, right? Because eventually I found out I was wrong, and I apologized for getting misinformation and running with it.
Yeah.
John is still claiming I didn't pay him, and I'm a junky liar. John is mentally ill, and he's obsessed with people who are more successful than him. Yeah. He can't take the fact that he's not a comedian or a musician or an author.
So let's just assume. Let's just assume that his conversation with Scott. Let's just assume, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Okay, so let's just assume.
I can see where. Right. Okay.
Where Scott may have had a conversation with him prior to, and I hate to say paid Scott.
Prior to me giving him the money, and Scott was mad and might have misled John.
End of story.
Right. Okay.
Right. So that's what I'm going to go with.
But now we know that because Scott has now said it on Twitter, and will tell you if you called him that maybe he misspoke a little bit, and he was in fact paid in full.
Okay, and so that's that. And
you know, John is still crazy about it. Again, I wanted to square it away with you guys because I respect you guys. It was on your airwaves. I wanted to clear the air. Just like Monique, I was misinformed about you with me, and I apologize for it when I found out I was a friend of mine totally told me false information. He was thinking of somebody else.
Okay, so I have questions. So real talk here. What the fuck is going on with your nose? Like, I really need to know. Isn't there...
Well, I mean, it's simple. I mean, too much yoga. What do you think?
No.
30 years.
No.
30 years of heroin and cocaine abuse, and a guy who works for my bookie punched me in the face and broke my nose while I had no septum, which means I got an infection that caused the nose to, like, you know, I look like I have Apollo Creed's nose at this point. I used to relate more to Rocky. And I have to go get it fixed, reshaped. And that can't happen until everything is sort of clear in there. I got 40 days clean, but it's going to take more time to just let 30 years of abuse just do its thing. That's what's going on with my nose.
Don't they have those little mice that grow? I've led an
unhealthy life, and I got punched in the face by a boxer who works for my bookie.
Yikes! You took a bet from Norm to that same bookie or guy just like it, and right. I guess it was to the tune of $50,000. He won $100,000. So he won. And the bookie just took off. He just, you know.
This is documented. This is completely documented. When Norm and I did Dirty Work, I had never met Norm until the audition for Dirty Work. The first night of rehearsals in Toronto, we went to a pool hall to sort of bond. I won $9,000 worth of Norm playing 9-ball, or $2,000. And anybody else, I'd say, lose to him on purpose. But Norm is a sort of an honorable gambler. He said he would get mad if you lost on purpose. I was a better pool shooter, and he paid me the $2,000. Now, we found out, because it was a buddy comedy and worked every day, that we had degenerate gambling in common, and we became amazingly best friends for a while. He asked me, because we were going into the fall, and he was going back to New York and I to L.A., he goes, do you have a guy who could take football bets? I said, I do. I got a middleman who works for a legit guy in Staten Island who I bet with my whole life. I said, but the guy's connected. You got to pay this guy. But my buddy was the middleman. All right. This was documented in a Details magazine article 20 years ago, so I've been open about this, and it's as fucked up gets. And Norm, to his credit, didn't end his friendship with me, but he realized I had nothing to do with it. Okay, not only did he not pay the bet, Norm lost 3 weeks in a row $100,000.
Jesus.
We were putting insane bets in on.
What is he so wealthy from, Artie? What is he so wealthy from? He's never really hit with them.
Well, he has his own sitcom for 2 years, making a lot of money.
But he could gamble like that.
He's done a lot of voiceover work. Listen, that's the problem. For a long time, he wasn't that wealthy. So, $100,000 was a lot to lose. But he had the cash. I went to Saturday Night Live 3 weeks in a row and got almost $100,000 3 football weekends in a row.
Jesus.
Okay, in the fall of '97, and I went to SNL, and he gave me like a Barney shopping bag with 100 G's. I won $16,000 one week. I peeled it off. It barely made a dent. And all this money he gave me, I'm walking down 6th Avenue with all this cash. 3 weeks in a row, Norm paid off like an honorable gambler. He paid the book. The middleman, I gave it to the middleman, and he took it to Staten Island, or so I thought.
It's always
okay.
Well.
After 3 weeks of paying off, Norm wins $104,000. He wins. So I go to get the money. I lost $8,000 that week. I'll never forget that. And the middleman, my friend, goes, the bookie disappeared. Now, no bookie on the planet Earth would not pay Norm because he wants this business. Eventually, a gambler loses. He's going to want to keep Norm on a hook. You pay the guy. No bookie disappears. Right. And my buddy was insanely shady. I know one of my friends from Jersey's lying, and Norm is like, well, this guy's the bookie. He's just keeping the money, and he can't pay it off. And I said, I think you're right. And Norm had every reason to believe I was in on it with him. But eventually he realized that I wasn't. But Norm told Bernie Brillstein, who was his manager at the time and still alive, and a Lower East Side Jewish guy who probably knew a ton of people. Bernie didn't get where he was being nice,
right?
And my buddy could have been in physical danger for a little while. I had to talk sort of Bernie and Norm out of maybe making a phone call. Norm probably never would have went there because he's more of a creative guy. But Norm got totally fucked, and it was a contact. I got him. And he was nice enough to let, to this day, me and Norm didn't have the same friendship. That's what my buddy caught. And to this day, my buddy has not admitted to me or paid me back the money.
Wow.
I said, you ripped off a friend of mine who was essentially my boss. I was doing a movie with Spade at the time. Norm, with one phone call, could have got me fired. He didn't do that because he's a good guy, but he could have. And I think my buddy ripped him off. I do.
It's the strangest relationship because he actually defended, well, he didn't defend, he went after Howard. And I actually had this on my YouTube channel a bunch of years ago for exploiting it. He was in our corner, meaning you using your addictions on the air. And he was very firm on that Howard was exploiting that. But Norm was. And Howard really hit him hard. And Howard tried to argue with tapes the next day, but I
never heard any of this. I never heard.
I'll give you that. But
Norm is a true friend. Norm is that. Also, what Howard loves about Norm too, the same thing he likes about me, is Norm's genuine. It's impossible for Norm to be phony. Norm also probably has an IQ of 200. He's a genius and one of the funniest human beings ever. And Howard respects that too. But Norm doesn't fall for bullshit. Norm and I relationship got strained because of that situation I just explained, which is totally true. And
what about Sam Simon? What about Sam Simon?
Sam Simon. What Sam Simon did is something I still can't fully talk about.
I'm not even trying to change the subject. Does that tie into it at all? Because you and Sam Simon.
No. Sam was a legitimate gambler too. But not self-deprecating like Norm. Like Sam always talks about the wins, and that's you want to hear a billionaire talk about the wins.
Yeah, no.
Sam did something reprehensible to me, and to this day, dead or not, I don't forgive the fucker. He was a rich asshole.
What did he do?
What did he do?
Let's do a tease. I'll tell you the next time. But again, John is mentally ill. I don't know where these rumors start. There's people out there that are like, I understand people who want to bash you trying to be funny on Twitter, and it's filled with people like that. It makes me furious that these non-comedians, they try to be funny and it's awful. It just comes off as mean, as insulting. I don't mind mean as long as it's funny, but it's like they're rooting against, like they want me to go to jail or something. Like I've wronged them in some way. Like I've never done anything wrong but be a drug addict. I've never stolen from someone. I'm a gambler, degenerate gambler. I'm pretty honest about that. I have all these vices that are sort of self-harming, but I really don't think I'm a bad guy. I would never in 2 billion years, I don't care how many drugs I was on, steal from any charity event I was ever invited. I've been involved with a lot of them. I don't get the credit for that sometimes. I never turned anyone down if I was able to help out with a charity because people helped me when my dad was sick, and I try to give back. And Howard was a pretty charitable guy. He just wasn't really vocal about it, like you should be really with publicity. But Howard gave to a lot of charity. I witnessed it, and I never saw John give to one. Talk about a guy. He borrowed money from me once, and without nagging him, I never would have got that back. And to have the audacity to first of all, people talk, people gossip, even guys nowadays. I was just in rehab with these young kids, young boys nowadays, 20-year-old men, are like Imelda Marcos with shoes. They have 400 pairs of shoes. They have the Nikes that you can't touch. You can't lace them wrong. I'm like, you guys are broads. It's unbelievable. And everybody gossips. Scott did a
GoFundMe.
A great thing. I think he did a ballsy thing because for some reason, I'm sure Scott has never wronged Howard, but Howard has anger in him that I got to tell you, he's been seeing a very high level shrink on the Upper West Side of Manhattan for about 20 years, and he's got a lawsuit with that guy because that guy has done nothing. If anything, he's worse.
Anything is worse. Right?
And he, Howard used to always say to me that, when we would have private conversations, and I don't think this is anything that revealing that he's got so much anger. I mean, I don't think it takes Sigmund Freud to figure out that Howard is this brilliant, genius of a guy with an insane work. I think Howard's one of those rare combinations. He's like Bruce Springsteen. When you have this combination, you get the kind of success Howard has had.
But is he a genius, or is he just really, really fucking lucky?
No. Lucky, my God, no, not. He's got some luck. He's got some luck, but everybody needs luck to get that level of success. But what he's got mostly is a work ethic and creative genius combined with regular intelligence. Like he's that rare combination like that you get where you don't have the drug issues that like some creative geniuses had. And you have the work ethic. So not only is he brilliant at what he does, he shows up. I mean, he was 8.5 years. He only missed 2 days. I was there 8.5 years. I think I missed a total of 4 years being absent. And he missed 2 days because of a root canal. That's the only thing that kept him out.
Well, but you have to know.
I don't think Freddie Norris was ever absent.
But you have to know that we, as Radio Gunk, and that we're a forum and a podcast that are a little bit on the anti-Howard set, only because we kind of feel like for the $90 million he's allegedly getting now, it's just changed. So we're just disenfranchised fans who feel like, for what he's getting paid, and certainly for what we pay for Sirius, we're not really getting the return on investment anymore.
Right. Well, stop paying it. The only way to send him a message is to stop paying it.
He doesn't give a fuck at this point.
Because you realize he's the best thing out there. If he's talking on the radio, you're probably hearing the best option on the radio. And believe me, I do stand up around the country, and I do a lot of morning radio shows, and there's no one even in his league.
But do you listen to him
not
anymore?
Anthony, not Ron, not Fez, not Kevin, not Bean. With all due respect, not you guys, and with all due respect, not me when I had my own show. There's no one like him on the radio. I worked 2 feet from the guy forever, and there's no one as good as Freddie. Where he's lucky is this: he somehow got the best ever in Freddie Norris in doing what he does. The best news broadcaster. I'm not talking about funny now. I'm talking about just broadcasting the news in Robin Quivers, and then talking about another one. And then
But do you listen anymore? But do you listen anymore?
No, but that's because more of a personal thing. It's too hard for me. As a fan, let me completely agree with you. As a fan, it is absolutely disappointing that he's and here's what's disappointing about it. As a rebellious comedian and as a fan of that show, forget about a guy who was on it for 8.5 years, and my comedy is not represented there anymore, except in reruns. But the political correctness has just washed over the show. What really makes me mad about the Howard situation is he was the one guy in show business that didn't have to change. He could have said to these PC people, I'm not changing Gary the Retard to Gary the Conqueror. I'm not stopping to say these words that I always said. I'm not stopping with the humor. I'm going to keep putting chicks on the Sybian if I want to, even though I think that's a good change because he's 65 and it's creepy.
Exactly,
but,
it's creepy.
You evolve a little bit. But he didn't have to change the politically incorrect humor. He could have been the one guy who said, I'm going to make more money than all he is, and I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to apologize for anything, and my fans will still be just as loyal.
So is it a Turk thing?
It's about entertainment.
Is it a Turk thing or is it an EGT thing?
And under his own volition, he changed.
But
for
Turk
some
or
reason,
AGT?
he wanted to be at Jennifer Aniston's wedding.
Right.
And that, instead of saying, F you, I don't want to go, I'd rather be me on the air. And that makes me sick. That's what's upsetting about it.
You're talking 2004. He makes the announcement. This is the height of Artie mania. Now you go to promote your book. He won't even let you buy commercials. Gary hangs up on you.
Gary didn't hang up on me, but he was very arrogant on the phone, and it aggravated me. And listen, that is as messed up as it comes, as far as I'm concerned. Because believe me, the only thing I really ever did wrong was I became a junkie. And at the end of the run, that was my issue there. Now, he did show a lot of compassion.
John, let him finish. John, let him finish.
He showed a lot of compassion off the air that people don't know about. He was very, very concerned, and we were close. But like I don't think he knew how to handle, an active junkie being on the biggest radio show ever. It was extraordinary what happened. Listen, you guys, as not only just fans, people who are in radio and successful, it's very flattering what you're saying. I think, but here's what his argument would be, and I'll just play the devil's advocate here. He was by himself on a bed in Detroit, making $96 a week, and no one wanted to be his friend.
Half year.
And he created this show. I jumped on a moving train. It just could have gotten worse. I do think a lot of the fans are very nice in saying they think that this legendary show that I got on actually got better when I got there. But that's because he got lucky in this sense. He got a fan of that show that was also a comedian who needed a job and was available for a job at the exact time Jackie left. And
but your laugh, your self-deprecating humor, your laugh, your ability to make something that maybe ordinarily wasn't too funny when Benjy passed it over to him, you made it fucking hysterical. And the reality is, do you think that you ever could be on today's show? Like, do you think you could fit in on today's show?
No, absolutely. You're right about that. No way. The times I do listen, every instinct I'll give you a perfect story. I was in a town car going to the airport to a gig, and the town car driver happened to be, this is pre-Uber, the town car driver happened to be a huge fan of the show, and he was genuinely excited to have me in the back seat, and he had the show on. It was a morning when he had the show on. So Richard Christie came in and told Howard on the air that his pet guinea pig died. And he had some gay name for the guinea pig,
right.
And I said, well, listen, it was almost as if I gave the guy his own private show in the back seat. I said, this is what I would say if I was there, and I basically abused Richard the entire time it took to get to JFK Airport. And what I noticed was I had the guy laughing hysterically. What I noticed
was it Taco?
That Howard wasn't giving him
was
shit.
His name Taco?
And neither was Freddie. Because Howard has already backed himself into this politically correct corner where he cries when a pet dies because of the harboring the cats and all that bullshit, which is post me. I would not be able to deal with that. I'm the one person who would call him out on it by that time. I got close to it. He couldn't get away with being Orlando Bloom, having a bromance with Orlando Bloom.
And his cock.
Like that's the show. Every instinct I had was to goof on Richard. Could you imagine Gilbert was in and Richard came in and said that? Me and Gilbert we'd still be talking. Howard didn't. Howard was compassionate towards him and actually said, I'm upset that your pet guinea pig died, instead of goofing on him for hours. Freddie had to be biting his tongue in a way where I couldn't imagine.
So let me ask you a question. So why do you think, in the big scheme of things today, why do you think that people that are still on that show, why do you think they stay so loyal to Howard and stick around the show?
I'm going to be blunt. You got to remember, there's a big difference between and people like Stuttering John tend to forget about this. John, if John didn't have a speech impediment, he'd be pumping gas in Massapequa, and he was an intern. Howard's a big first impression guy. It's Howard still treats Gary like Boy Gary in a lot of ways, because that's how he first got to know him. John came on as an intern. Jackie came on as an unknown comic making no money, needed the job, and helped create that show to what it was. Freddie was a guy who needed a job in radio when he started.
He was out of college.
Robin was an unknown news person. By the time I got there, In other words, I think I was so good to him at what I was doing different in that chair that I was the one guy who was already I was already a self-made millionaire from comedy by the time I got there, and I had big quotes for a salary, and Howard knew that I was a guy that was talented enough to make it in regular show business. Didn't like to hire guys like that because he didn't want to spend that kind of money or give away that kind of attention. But with me, he made an exception because I think he thought it was different and good, and that's so I was able to leave, and since then I've done a lot of work and made a lot of money because I'm confident I will always be able to make a living in being funny. Sal was a stockbroker. Richard was an unknown drummer.
A lot of them, this is their first jobs ever in radio.
By trade, and they have nowhere else to go. They're still on the biggest radio show, so they'll take the abuse, and they're talented people, but they're not going to make a living doing stand-up comedy. They're in trouble after the show, and I think they realize that, so they're staying put with a salary. On a show that's, Gary's a great producer, but he's not going to make that kind of money anywhere else.
Is he?
He's got a house in Greenwich, Connecticut.
But is he? I hear so much shit about Gary. And some people have told me, people that you used to work with, are like, Gary's a fucking habitual liar. He will throw you under the bus the moment he possibly can because he's very self-preserving.
Gary is. Let me tell you. Gary is in a tough position. Gary has produced the biggest radio show ever for 35 years under constant public fire. I mean, his nickname is Baba Booey, and he's got to try to book real A-list guests. While he's getting abused on the air. Gary's got a real thick skin, but look, like any producer from Freddie to Cordova on down, when you're dealing with that big of a media figure where that is your god and you have to make him happy, you're going to be in situations where you got to at least bend the truth. People lie. People have different reasons for lying. I lied because I was a heroin addict, but my comedy was always honest. And Gary, I think is great at what he does. Ultimately, Gary, I think, is a really good man who is in a crazy job. But the way he treated me with the book was just really. But again, the hypocrisy on that show. Howard created a toxic atmosphere. Like people like Ralph and Jason and those people, they have to come in and tell Howard on the QT, hey, Fred has a stain on his shirt. That's how they have to be funny. Fred and I didn't have to do that. We could be funny anyway. We didn't have to be rats. But that's how it was. Gary was upset that I went too far after he threw out a first pitch like Sarah Michelle Gellar in a baseball game. And I can't make fun of it. And he actually thought I went too far with it. And I felt like, Gary, about 23 times you got a message from me where I was basically dying on the other end of the phone from heroin withdrawals, almost near death in heroin withdrawals. And you played it 15 times on the radio. Yeah. And it's the same joke over and over again. The 16th time, did you ever think about going, you know what, this is my friend. I'm not going to play it for Howard. We've beaten that joke to death. Artie, you sound like you're dying. Can I bring you a glass of water? Can I get you an aspirin? Can I send you something? Instead of just exploiting it on the radio? How dare he have a problem with anything I ever did? You're setting the ground rules, man, and I laid in wait like I did with all of them, and eventually they screw up, and Howard's, in my corner with wanting to abuse them, and Howard sanctions all that. When Gary threw out that first pitch, I was going to give him a pass, but Howard looked at me and said, time to do your job, and the abuse was extra bad because of all the times he played that voicemail, and that's just how the show was, and I have no guilt about it at all. Again, and there's a lot of things I'll get on Howard about, but he, quite frankly, he gave me carte blanche with that. I'm the only other person besides Robin, and sometimes her mic was even turned off. Like, I'm the only other person where my microphone was on all the time, right. And he let me go wherever I wanted to go. And because I became a junkie, and it was a show that was a comedy show, on the air, he exploited it. Yeah, but quite frankly, sometimes the moments were funnier with me asleep. He offered me a bunch of times off the air, said, Art, take a year off if you need it, get better, and you come back and you have a job. What else can you expect the boss to do? On the air, it got dark. It got bad. It ended terribly. It's not his fault I stabbed myself. It's not his fault I started doing heroin. He didn't want to fire me because he knew that's not. Chris Rock came in once and said, and Howard said to him on the air, how would you handle Artie? And Rock said, like what a lot of people would say, I think you got to fire him. There's no consequences in his life. He's got to get fired and maybe you get better. Howard knew that's not how to handle me. I didn't want to get fired. look, you talk about getting residuals. You could argue this. To fall asleep on the air, I was getting paid. My final salary there was, and this is the truth, was $950,000 a year for just the show. I tripled that on the road from books and stand-up and everything. The thing you said that's insanely flattering, which is probably the nicest compliment professionally I've ever got in my life, is that you think that many people only came over because I was with the show.
We know that.
We really do.
I mean, how I did something very different than Jackie on that show. I co-hosted it, whereas Jackie did basically what Benjy did, but Jackie created that chair. I think I made it the Artie chair in those 8 years, but and the show was very different. But my comedy is raw. It's crazy. The compliment I love that I think is accurate, and I'll take this credit more so than maybe I should, is that people say the first 4 years that we were on Sirius, and then my last 4 years on the show,
Gold.
when we went over there, shot out of a cannon because we were finally free from those Janet Jackson fucking Super Bowl chains, were the best 4 years in the history of radio.
Absolutely.
A lot of people say that aren't even Stern fans, and I'll gladly accept some credit for that, because it was hardcore, it was nutty, still politically incorrect before that wave came in Howard's own mind. And look, I think he saw where the wind was blowing. Howard, I don't think he could have fired me because of heroin, but heroin kind of did the job for him, because he knew that I couldn't fit into a politically correct show. He knew that's where the winds of show business were blowing, and he's great at knowing that too. It's another skill he has, knowing which way they're going and then just exploiting that. What I worry about Howard as a friend is I think it's going to be almost like a Citizen Kane ending for him.
Yeah.
He's going to be alone because he doesn't trust anybody, because he is this genius who has these lonely feelings of maybe, I think differently, so I'm alone. I'm different than even my fan.
We always say he's going to be like Howard Hughes, just kind of hold up like Ebenezer Scrooge, sitting there counting his marbles. But I have a question for you. When Tim Sabian was on our show, he said that he actually was the one who had to wind up firing you, because Howard couldn't do it.
Howard's not a big confrontation guy either. Sure, it's like, I mean, listen, there were certain things that the relationship Howard and I had was so complicated. I think he thought of me like he had an affection for me that he didn't really have for other people. He shut down a whole New York City pizzeria to throw a surprise party for me. Even Gary said he's never done that for anybody in his life, even blood relatives. He had me. He didn't have a best man at his wedding, but essentially I took the best man honors and gave the best man toast. He trusted me with it, and I always came through for him with stuff like that. And the foreword he wrote for my book is so thoughtful and thought out, and it's one of the most brilliant forewords ever written. He used pictures. He took time to really to get it right, but also. The fights we had became more like friends having fights. Like I said stuff to him I called him a pelican on the air. No one's ever said.
Oh, we love that.
It's like the bro fight is hard for me to even listen to because it's me breaking up with a friend. That bro fight indicated the end of our on and off relationship.
Okay, but then
I knew
what?
After I said that about him in that fight, I saw the look he had, and I knew Howard. And I said, well, my time here is now over.
But then what? But then what, Artie? So take it to another step then. So then what? So then you get fired from Sirius, and you had that unfortunate
Then I'm on my own. It's almost like the mafia. It's like Paul Sorvino at the end of Goodfellas with Ray Liotta. Now I got to turn my back on you. Gives you $3,000 for a lifetime. And you could say, people will talk about this with SNL too, with Lorne Michaels. Once you cut yourself loose, you are gone. And I cut myself loose. The arguments, the anger I had towards him, and I listened back to some replays. People send me clips of stuff that they think they're funny. I forgot I even did it. The way I talked to him by the end was like how a friend would talk to a friend, and he didn't want that. In other words, he said, the show's about everybody busting each other's balls. I'm the first person doing a roast to ever make a joke about him. I started the floodgates opening with that, and then of course Sal talks about Beth like an idiot.
It's a classic moment.
These are all Stern moments that are created because of the atmosphere he created on that show, and only with me did he get it back. And we did things that were incredibly touching for each other, but we did things that hurt each other, and I had to go at some point.
So did you talk to him after that? Did you talk to him after you got fired? Did you talk to him after you stabbed yourself?
No, that's where I can't believe how he handled it.
Right.
He called me once at rehab the day after it happened. And we had a nice conversation, but that was almost like an obligatory thing anybody would have done.
Right.
Sabian had to let me know that I probably shouldn't come back after that last day. He had to call me, but I expected that. What really got to me was after I got better and got out, Robin got sick. And I talk about this all the time. The security guard at Beth Israel at the hospital was a big fan of the show, I guess, knew the situation, and he saw me walking up, and he just said to me, he's up there, you know. And I didn't know. So by mistake, Howard and I and Robin had an hour of making Robin laugh like we were on the radio again. But after that, we hugged, and I said, maybe this is a turning point where a personal thing happened. I go, I'll call you tomorrow. He goes, great. I called him 3 times in a row. He never called me back. And the third time I said, Howard, listen, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be on this side of it where I'm bugging you. Obviously, you're done with this relationship, and I wish that wasn't the case. I love you. I'm sorry for anything I did, and I hope to talk to you again. And in his head, he had already planned on never seeing me again.
So
you know?
Was it true? Was it true
to use his words, we had been through battles together.
Right.
That was handled, in my opinion, that on his part was handled wrong.
So was it true that at some point you actually weren't able to go into the Sirius studios? Because we used to hear that you weren't allowed to be there like Mondays through Wednesdays when his show was on.
I never got that. No, I was never told not to go in the building. I went to do Opie and Jim Norton show a couple of times, and the Race Wars podcast with Sherrod and Kurt Metzger. I was always welcome in the building, not on that side of the building maybe, which weird the 180 I did in my life. But when we were promoting Crashing for the first time on Opie and Jim, I went in with Judd, and Judd Apatow happened to be the guest my last day on the show. I don't even remember it because I was in a blackout. Judd said, you passed by me drunk, because Judd's a big fan. And when I went back in to promote Crashing, I said, that was the first time I was back in the building. I said, my life has done a 180. It's so surreal. I used to not be allowed on this side of the building.
That's
now
amazing.
I'm not allowed in the Stern side. And quite frankly, like you point out, a side that I helped build. I mean,
Artie Apatow hasn't been on Howard in years.
Right. If Judd being involved with me has affected his life in that way,
Absolutely.
I feel bad. Even though Judd would never bring it up to me. He's too classy of a guy. But I know Judd loves the show and loved doing the show and was always great on the show because Judd's an amazing storyteller. But when people get involved with me now, there's extra bullshit they have to deal with. That's why Judd and Pete hire me. They knew what they were getting into when they hired me for Crashing, and I like to think that they got their money's worth there too. On air, but off air, I put them through hell,
Do you think that, and I know we talk about Marci Turk, and she's a fucking cult leader, and I don't even understand the whole getting things done thing, though. But
I can't understand it either. That's another thing. You're so right. And I've said this publicly, almost on the verge of being libelous. I mean, I think she's a con artist. Really getting things done. I mean, Howard has such an impressive brain, and he's been brainwashed by someone. He hired her, but after she somehow this guy who wrote this book convinced him that I don't have time because I'm dealing with some Saudi Arabian prince who's paying me. But these are con artists. The whale they land if they land a Howard Stern.
Oh my God!
She's got a bigger office than Gary.
Yeah.
I hear she makes money that I won't speculate on, but it's a lot of money. And for what? To ruin comedy?
Tell
them to go back and take the lisp out of the gay bits.
Better. She was 34. She was 34 years old. She had, and of course her LinkedIn is blocked now, but she was 34 years old. She had 8 jobs or 7 jobs before she landed this big fish as CEO of his fucking company.
And she does what a tick who gets into your organization does. She marries a vulnerable person. The kid she married, a great kid, an intern.
kid?
Who was
Ben
shy, shy intern, not great with the ladies. She gets in there, and here's this. Now all of a sudden, he's in Howard's social inner circle because he's married to her, and she knows that gets you involved in too. Marry into the family. She's doing what a con man. She's a grifter. She's a grifter.
She got married on a
whale.
She got married on a Wednesday so that Howard could come to the fucking wedding. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
My God. It's
Artie,
unbelievable. I had two 14-hour days on Jerry Maguire, and I to kill time on a movie set. I would play catch with a couple of the key grips. They bring their gloves. I brought my baseball and my glove just to play catch to kill time outside Tom Cruise's enormous condo-level trailer. A nanny was there with a little boy. I didn't even know it was Travolta's kid, but I realized it because Kelly Preston was paying attention to him afterwards. But the kid, like any little boy, was interested in the baseball. He must have been 4, and I rolled it to him. And the nanny said, "You're going to hit him in the face. He'll get hurt." And I'm like, my impression then was you're raising a pussy. But the kid was sick. This is Hollywood. That's the other thing. Howard always said from the first time I went in there with Norm Macdonald and told the story about getting arrested on Mad TV. He said to Norm, "Don't you love out of control guys? Like you don't know if they're going to show up. They're great to hang around with." And that's exactly what he hired. And then we both got to be friends off the air. And I think there was an affection there he didn't expect to happen. And the way he handled it after I left with the phone calls, it could have been handled better on his part, way better. And it got me mad. And I said a lot of things in the media because I had a platform with my own show for a while that I might have not meant. But where you guys are 100% right is the show is not nearly as good as it was anymore. Marci Turk has a lot to do with that. Political correctness is bullshit with him more than anybody because he's the one guy that didn't need to do it. And you'd like to think he had more of the Hunter S. Thompson. The guy you rooted for all these years was the guy who said, "Fuck you. I'm not going to have a bromance with Orlando Bloom. I'm going to goof on somebody who does." I'm
not going to search on the internet for pictures of his cock. Wait, I want to ask you two things. One, do you think, and again, if you've not listened to it too much, I'll give you leeway on this, but we all feel like it has gotten so fucking gay. Like there are never women on air anymore. Nobody shows their tits. There's no.
Well, because all of showbiz. Yeah, again, I would agree with you 100% on what I read about it. Because the feminization. Howard was always not like his fans. In other words, the brilliance about Howard and the paradox completely was his fans were guys who had season tickets to the Rangers and the Islanders, and he's a guy who watched the season finale of Friends over a hockey playoff game, and he was open about it. You know what I mean? He likes awful types of shows. He likes shit I hate, like Survivor and stuff.
Bachelor,
but
it's
he
all
let
cock.
me be
It's
me.
all
He never
cock.
tried to change me. He knew I spoke to that fan who was a sports fan. The sports reference I made they didn't get, but there was that aspect and I think Freddie loved that too because Freddie's more of a man.
But don't you get that? It's 100% why we followed you.
He loved that was represented on the show.
But
now
it's
that
not
is
who he
gone.
is.
I'm not saying that you need me there for it, but there's none of that anymore because
Artie.
all of show business has become that. Neil Patrick Harris is this generation's Clint Eastwood, and again, Howard knows the way the market rolls in show business and in pop culture, and he's just reflecting that. He doesn't have to reflect it, but he is. That's the problem.
He hires George Takei.
Right, exactly. There was the contrast to me and George, and look, that's the ironic thing. There is that's almost an anti-gay movie by a lot of people who are so gay because but the bits we did. Okay, an example of a bit we did. This was Benjy's idea. I came out to George Takei on hidden camera. Now that not because of my talents, but because of George's niceness and gullibility, that becomes, in my opinion, one of the best bits in the history of entertainment. Because I'm telling you right now, not only did he fall for I was going to come out the next day, if I leaned in, he would have made out with me.
Totally.
I could have fucked him. I mean, that would have been going really far with the comedy. But in other words, I was the one who had the compassion. I called Howard up and I said, Howard, we have to call George and not go through with this joke tomorrow morning because this is something he really had to do. He had to come out to somebody in real life. I'm doing it, and we're joking about it in front of millions of people. Now, the way Howard revealed it the next day was brilliant, but Howard Howard said, no, we're not doing that. Like he went. That's when Howard went for the comedy, and he was more into the guy in Traffic on the LIE than appeasing Orlando fucking Bloom and Jennifer Aniston and Marci Turk. Marci Turk does not represent the guy in Traffic on his way to a shitty job that he used to be king. I heard him turn down movie stars that he thought would be boring because Beetlejuice wanted to come in and get naked. That's when that's where the show's different. Now the movie star comes in.
Right. Now the movie
who was
star.
it, Artie? Who was it?
Oh, David Duchovny. Anyway.
Oh, well, call him a movie star. You know what, though? You tell that great story about Richard Gere, because there was a thing where I guess he had hung out with Richard Gere in the Hamptons, and you cracked, I guess, a gerbil joke or something. And
well, that's right. I didn't get the memo a lot of the times. He told a great story about Richard Gere, where Richard Gere was with that wife of his from Law and Order, whoever the broad was in his life.
Mariska
Hargitay. And he was clearly coming on to Beth. And Howard's a smart guy. He knows this. And Beth, of course, didn't do anything. But clearly, if Beth was willing to, and there's a lot of chicks out there in the Hamptons, I'm sure who are, Richard Gere could have banged her. Would have banged her if she was like that. And he was trying to in front of his wife, maybe like a swinger situation. And I always said to Howard, like with John Stamos, when they hung out, when him and Beth hung out with John Stamos and Rebecca Romaine in the hot tub, I said, Howard, if someone's making a beer run, it's you. There's 3 supermodels and you in the tub. Like that's where where chicks always.
But you know what, Artie? He is a serial liar. His whole thing was, even when you were there, he would make up stories about guys dry humping Beth on the sidewalk of West 67th and Columbus, and movie producers are like,
I never heard that, but I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've dated a lot of chicks out of my league, and in show business, it depends on the girl you're with. You got to be with a good girl because guys will blatantly hit on them right in front of you, and sometimes my jersey comes out. This is where Howard's more classy than me. I threaten to throw people out of a moving car. But you got to put your foot down and stop that, or have a girl who's loyal, with which Beth is. But what you're talking about is like, in other words, because Beth was so social, and this was new to Howard. She would meet people in the Hamptons. They'd have dinner with. He'd become friends with them. People we bashed for years and years, And I wouldn't get the memo on that. So I come on the air and bash somebody. Richard Gere was an example. Tom Bergeron was another one. I'm like, I can't goof on Tom Bergeron anymore. Like, well, no, I'm friendly with him. So I go, I'll do whatever you want, but just let me know. Don't make me look like an asshole because I'm being mean to Tom Bergeron. His life changed off the air, and of course, it changed on the air. But now that life, that sort of lifestyle that nobody can relate to in his fan base, who made him rich, quite frankly, has totally invaded the show. He used to keep it separate, but now it's like that koozie lifestyle that he leads is always in the back of a limo. That attitude and personality is what the show is now.
Well, and the sad thing is that when
it's time to go. I think it's time for him to go, and I think he knows.
We agree. And what we used to love the best about him going on vacation, you guys going on vacation, was that first day back, where we would hear about what everybody did over the vacation. And Howard was more than willing to talk about shit that he did with Beth, especially when they were in the city. But, when you go out and buy a home in Palm Beach for $56 million cash, that automatically takes you out of the realm of being able to associate with the trucker driving, across country.
Well, what do you want the guy to do, though, Monique? That's a good point, but what do you want him to do? He's got the money. He probably needs it for a tax windfall.
100%.
I mean, he's got so much cash coming in. Eventually you buy a house in Palm Beach. But in other words, he was always good at really trying so hard, even though he for a long time was very wealthy.
For a long time.
In ways you didn't even realize.
That's right.
But he was always good at trying hard to relate to the more common man. Quite frankly, like I did by just being genuine, because I am the common man. I mean, by the end, he was sort of like. look, you relate to Artie better. Like the way he blew off the thing, like the popularity contest was, and this is partially true, probably, is you can relate to Artie because he's a slob and he's not a genius. He's like you. I'm a genius that you can't relate to. That's not endearing yourself to your fans, but they stay because he's still the best on the radio. But it's finally over. It's finally like at 65 years old. It's like I think he hates the whole YouTube thing where his content is on. I know he hates this, where he can't control his content. He doesn't need it for promotion. But there's hypocrisies and contradictions that you're going to find.
He knew he was taking Friday off. He said nothing about it. Then he dropped that bomb, and then that became fucking Thursday off. And
you know what? I like you, man, because you're passionate and you're very nice to me, and you're clearly a smart guy. But you're the classic example of someone who hates him, but you clearly know everything about him because you're a fan. You listen like crazy. But where you guys are totally right in your anger is the show doesn't have to be the way it is now. It doesn't have to be as crazy as when I was there because you do evolve, but it doesn't have to be, Gary the Conqueror, right. and it doesn't have to be all that. Well, it doesn't have to be Marci Turk's version of what a comedy show should be. I mean, think about that. What qualifications does she have? Listen, you guys are make a living on the radio. I'm a professional comedian. I bought my mom a house doing comedy. I mean, it's more than Marci Turk can say. She's a con artist.
She did improv. That's the lowest form of fucking comedy that there is.
Improv.
Yeah, of course. Take that back.
Look, but I'm willing to do this with you guys again because this is fun.
But I have to tell you something.
And
seriously,
I appreciate you guys being so positive towards me and everything else because it does help. You guys are a big deal. You hear about you all the time, and you got a big fan base, and you guys should take credit for that. You guys are a joy. And I'll leave this about my friend John because me and Stutter and John are friends, and I do. He went through a tough divorce. His children are lovely, and I wish him the best. He's got to let some of this shit go. I'm willing to make bygones be bygones, but it's like, I mean, come on. When you're outright lying about something where I stole money from a charity, that's not cool. And I appreciate you guys giving me more than equal time to defend it. And I'd like to be friends with my old friend John again, but
I think you guys kind of are friends. I mean, remember when he took a shit fit over you and Grillo, like talking about him running for Congress, which was so fucking funny. Remember?
Oh my God! Yeah, and the thing, look, him and Anthony Cumia were friends until Anthony got involved with me, and John came on the air once. Listen to that; it's a perfect example. John is saying the most evil shit about me and Anthony, and we give something back. The difference is we're being funny. People are laughing, and John can't take it. He thinks we're being mean. He's delusional.
The one too many. He did a commentary when he got that movie. John did one too many.
Yeah, oh my God, that's what he did as far as movies are concerned. One too many.
I don't think John is capable of really being a fucked up liar, but I think that he's misrepresented what happened between you and Scott, and I think I kind of have to leave it at that.
John's not capable of telling a long lie because it would take 4 hours.
Hey, Artie, so promise me you'll come back on.
Listen. I do love the guy, and I realize his anger, and he's gone through some tough times with a bad divorce and everything. But he's a good man. He loves his kids. His relationship with it's great to see John. You can tell a real man's heart by how they love their children. John loves his kids fiercely, and he should. I should be proud of them, and I love the guy. But this is like, I mean, come on. And I appreciate Radio Gunk being the Sinatra to our Lewis and Dean Martin.
We kind of are. And promise me you'll come on again, and also promise me one other thing.
I will, without question, come on again. And how could I not? I mean, you guys, the biggest compliments in the world have been given to me in the last hour. I thank you.
We have Dan the Crooked Cop on our site, Artie, fielding questions for you.
Daddy's a guy,
He's your Bernie Pussy.
Yeah, he's a loyal, faithful friend. I love Danny. But,
yeah,
like me, has some issues.
He told us a Ray Liotta story and a Daryl Dawkins story.
Yeah. He's a good storyteller too, Danny. But,
next time you come on, we're probably going to take questions from our listeners for you. Okay?
I would love to listen. I promise you, Monique. Just stay until within a month. We'll do this again.
Yeah, as long as you don't change your phone number another 52 times. I really want to.
No. I'll make sure you can get me on Twitter.
I really want to talk to you
I will always be there for Radio Gunk.
I really want to talk to you about rehab. I'm so happy you're doing this. You sound so fucking good. I want to talk to you about the thing you want to do for other people in rehab, which I think is
we'll chat
so
when that charity starts in the spring. I'm going to be doing that once a month. We're getting the kids rehab money. I see that the kids need that, so we'll do all that. Absolutely.
Okay, sweetheart. All right, thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate us being able to do this last minute with you. We love you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I love you guys too. I'm officially a friend. I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Bye. Be well.
All right.